Welcome to the Success Ascent. My name is Pat Mancuso. Today on our episode, we are joined by Brent Magnussen, entrepreneur, business owner, and also author of the book, Roger Up. During our conversation with Brent, he shares with us a very simple morning routine. He also shares with us about surrounding yourself with the right people so you can go to the next level. Ladies and gentlemen, on to the ascent. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Success Ascent. I am Pat Mancuso, the host and creator of our show, and today I'm extremely excited to bring a gentleman to you by the name of Brent Magnussen. Now, Brent is the author of a book titled Roger Up.
Hey, thanks so much, Pat. I appreciate the time, and thanks for having me on. Looking forward to talking to your audience.
Well, and Brent, you know, the thing I love about talking with folks that have been in the military and served our country, and first of all, thank you so much for your service. We wouldn't have the freedoms we have today without you and everybody who served our country. Is being in the military, there's a lot of leadership, entrepreneur mindset pieces that I always find when I talk with somebody like yourself. So first, Brent, let's talk with who is Brent? Tell us about yourself.
Well, it's, doing radio for the book and more podcasts and everything. It's always interesting when I'm asked to describe myself. It's usually a little easier on me when I'm introduced, but this is a more honest way to do it. So yeah, I'm just an average guy that tries every day to be great. And even if I fall a little short, at least I'm in the hunt every single day to be a better version of me. I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. Mom was a school teacher. Dad was a hydraulics mechanic, and rocking that middle class dream. And grew up very, very athletic. Played soccer. Started wrestling in 5th grade. Got into martial arts very early. And always knew that if soccer didn't work out, if I wasn't going to be the next Cristiano Ronaldo or the next Lionel Messi, I always knew that the military, probably more specifically the Army, was that solid plan B or that contingency plan. My dad served in the Air Force. Most of my uncles, great uncles, grandparents, most of them served. Most of the men in my family served in the military. I still have cousins and people in my family still serving today. And I just knew that was always going to be an option, and I'm glad that I didn't hit that level of soccer I wanted to, because joining the Army was one of the best things I ever did. I enlisted in '96. I was a combat engineer, got to see a bunch of amazing places, deployed to some very interesting places, and along the way, I met some incredible people that, from '96, so 24 years later, I'm still in close contact with a good amount of those guys, and just got to serve with some amazing people and learn some very valuable lessons that I was able to transfer over into the civilian world. After a short stint contracting, became entrepreneurial in 2008, 2009, and kind of went from there. I started a t-shirt company while living in Vegas, supporting cancer, and at the same time sponsoring UFC and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu fighters. And a couple of years ago, started writing a lot just for, military and kind of that topic related websites. The book came about 3 or 4 years ago, and did a lot of research, did a lot of writing, and finally put it out. Came out a few months back, and we're getting after it, Pat. We're trying to live the dream every day, and trying to, it's easy to talk, especially for a bullshitter like me. But I am really, really focused on every day trying to walk the walk. And that's kind of what the book's about.
So let's start first of all with the title, Roger Up. I mean, I know where that came from, yet some of our listeners may not. So talk about that first, the title.
Yeah, so I'm sure most of your listening audience has heard the term Roger that, which essentially confirms a transmission. Roger that, copy that. But in the military, specifically in the Army, we have a term called Roger Up. It's essentially a mantra. When you feel like your body is smoked, you feel like your mind is smoked, and you have nothing left, you actually have 20 to 30% more fight left in you. And when you're able to, 1, recognize that, and then 2, tap into that reserve, it's one of the most incredible things in the world. It's a beautiful thing. And I learned that real early at my first unit in Germany. There's always someone faster. There's always someone that shoots better. There's always someone smarter. There's always someone stronger. So there's always something, especially when you're in this sea of alpha males, like I was being in a combat unit. You're constantly trying to get better. And it doesn't matter who you are. They're going to find a weakness in you, and they're going to make you break. And there's a reason for that. And it's good when you break, because then you can be rebuilt up. But with all that said, that Roger Up mantra is applicable to every walk of life. Whether you're an Army guy or a 68-year-old woman in a nursing home, you can Roger up in every aspect of your life every day. It's just about the standards you want to hold yourself to and the decisions that you make.
So we talk as a coaching and consultant in our world about more potential. So that Roger Up is really that more potential that you have that you don't think you have when you hit that ceiling.
Absolutely. And I'll while it's fresh on my head, you and I appreciate with your podcast, you and I had a discovery call, and I think they usually probably last 15 minutes, and you and I ended up shooting the breeze for an hour.
Yeah.
We have a lot of similarities the way we look at goal setting, and there's one word that you did not stop harping on, and it's one word that I do not stop harping on, and that's accountability.
Yes.
And before I forget it, because I know we're probably going to cover a lot of things, that accountability is so important. And we don't see it in a lot of coaching programs out there because there's a lot of fluff. In a lot of goal setting programs, there's a lot of fluff. It's almost like this beautiful Ferrari, but you got a Chevette engine in it. And that engine is that accountability that it's going to start and perform at a high level every day. And this Roger Up mantra is really your accountability. It's knowing that it's there, that reserve that you can tap into. And it's being accountable and going to that well, if you will, that proverbial well every day. So, it's an important thing. And I think a lot of us, unfortunately, especially the younger generation, I'm speaking as a 44-year-old guy, a lot of the snowflakes in mom and dad's basement, the keyboard warriors of the world, a lot of people that haven't seen, done, and experienced too much outside of mom's basement or just their immediate surroundings, haven't had to go through that real serious adversity. And it just doesn't have to be the military. It can be financial, it can be business, it can be anything. And once you hit that point, the beautiful thing about hitting the bottom is there's nowhere to go but up. But once you hit that point where you think you're done and you're broke and you can tap into this, and we could probably dive more into that later. It's an amazing thing, and everyone has it in you. Doesn't matter where you're from, how old you are, what color you are, what your sexual orientation is, what your political affiliation is. It doesn't matter. If you're 12 or 98, man, woman, whatever, you have this inside you. Doesn't matter how you were built, it's in there. That reserve is in there when you think you're done, and you can tap into it. It's just a matter of finding it and really going after it.
So, Brent, did you have that mindset as much and as strongly as you do? I can tell you're passionate about it. Did you have that mindset of that more potential before the military? Did the military enhance it? I mean, talk about that a little bit.
I flirted with it, but I never got it to commit with me. If we're speaking like relationship terms, I flirted with it. I took it on a few dates, but I was never able to commit. And, I had a really great upbringing. I'm very fortunate. My dad having a military background, he was, and my mom being a school teacher, they were firm with us and discipline was there. But I was a wild kid. If I was growing up in these times, I'd be ADH, XQZ. I'd probably be on 14 medications. And my outlet was athletics and just being outside and running around to tire myself out. I think I had it. I was driven. I think martial arts and starting wrestling in 5th grade really helped because they were one-on-one sports and I couldn't rely on my team, even though I loved soccer. And so I think wrestling really helped build that, but it was like junior high. And when I got to the Army and I realized not just basic training, but getting to a combat unit and being around some real terminators, you realize very quickly that there are levels to this discipline game, to this being hard, if you will. And I was pretty soft. What I thought was pretty solid. I was pretty soft when I got there, and that changed quickly, and I loved it.
So in the book, you talk a lot about routines and those disciplines, if you may, which makes sense, obviously, based upon your military background and also how you were brought up. Share with us a couple of those routines, if you may. You talked about one about getting up in the morning, like how you start your day. Talk to us about a few of those routines.
So the biggest thing for me is the morning routine. And I know we've all heard of morning routines. Everyone's got a morning routine. You go on Facebook and there's ads for 22 different morning routines. Type in morning routine on Google or YouTube. You're going to see everything from a 5-minute plan to some guy wanting you to take a 3-hour milk bath and meditate for 6 hours. And by the time you're done with your morning routine, it's time for dinner. The first chapter in the book is the 0530 blueprint. And it doesn't necessarily mean you have to get up at 0530. It's whatever's comfortable for you. But for me, and the military did a great job of brainwashing me that getting up before the sun, we were taught that the sun is the enemy. And it's the most consistent competition we have. No matter where I was, if I was in Germany, if I was deployed to Bosnia, if I was in Macedonia, if I was in some other place, wherever I'm at, that sun for 44 years I've been on this planet has been up every day and usually before me. So it's the most consistent competition we have. And all of the top performers that I was able to interview and talk to just related to the morning routine, guys like Tony Robbins, who I had the pleasure of meeting in 2010 and have learned a tremendous amount from. Jocko Willink, Jason Redman, retired Navy SEAL who wrote the foreword to the book, who's a great friend. Mel Robbins, Grant Cardone, all these people have a few things in common. One, they all get up early and they're all super productive the first 30 to 60 minutes of the day. It's non-negotiable. I even reference Beethoven in the morning routine and how he was so obsessive about his morning coffee. He would count out 60 coffee beans every single morning. And it did not change because he thought that that was the perfect amount of coffee. And if you actually do the math, it's like 9 espressos. So we probably feel some sympathy for Beethoven's neighbors because he was probably a lunatic. But it's that consistency. And I think the number one thing is having a plan. I talk to a lot of younger guys and gals, but probably more younger guys, because I think the book being written from a male perspective, I get a lot of younger guys in their 20s and even early 30s DMing me, emailing me, asking me about the routines. And it's all laid out right there. I mean, having a plan is the number one thing. When I go out and speak and I'll ask people, because they read the morning routine and they're like, the first thing you do is very odd. The first thing I do when I wake up in the morning is I smile before I get out of bed. I smile for 15 seconds, like I just fell in love again or like I just won the lottery. And I picked that up a few years ago and it's changed my life. And I ask sometimes if I'm speaking to an audience of 100 people or I'm speaking to an audience of 600 people, I'll ask, raise your hand if you woke up anytime in your life and just smiled before you got out of bed. Usually no one raises their hand. And that's one of the craziest things. And all the content we have in this book, that's one of the biggest things I get messaged and emailed and stuff about is the smiling, because it tricks your brain. Even if you had the worst day before, even if you had the worst night, even if you had bad sleep, it tricks your psychology, it tricks your physiology, it tricks your brain into thinking, well, for some reason we're smiling so big, like that cheesy smile, and it tricks you. And it's like, okay, well, we might as well get up because something positive's happening. And the second I get up, I make the bed. And it's not just a military thing. It should be an everyone thing, because making the bed is your first task completed. And these little task completions add up throughout the day. So before I walk out of that room, I've smiled and I've changed my psychology and physiology. I've made the bed and I've made it well. It's a legit task completed. And then I drink 16 ounces of room temperature water to rehydrate myself after 6, 7, 8 hours of no drinking anything. So those are the first 3 things I do before I even leave the bedroom. And that's every morning, and it's non-negotiable. It's treated like war. It will not change. And for me, it's been amazing. And for all the people who I have a tremendous amount of respect for, who are super successful and super happy, they're doing these same things as well. Right. And the people that have responded to the book and the messages that we get are awesome. And all these people, I never thought I'd be getting so many emails about people smiling first thing in the morning, but it's awesome.
You need a t-shirt that says smile.
I know.
Yeah.
And by the way, this t-shirt is not me suggesting by any means that I'm superior. My stepdaughter, we went to this store called Five Below.
Yes.
And she always hears me talking about like having a superior mindset, and she's 9. So she's like, oh, you should get that. So I'm wearing this kind of representing her.
I love it. I love it. So how do you look at challenges? You know, we live in a world, we've got a lot of different things going on. And so what's your model to coach people and help them around their mindset, around challenges, around ceilings?
Yeah, I think, that term that gets used quite often is glass ceilings, smashing through the ceilings. And I know for the short amount of time some years ago where I was in sales, there's that, do you want a fully commissioned job with no cap on commissions, or do you want the $30,000 or $40,000 a year salary, and then you can maybe double or triple that in commissions, but there's always a cap, there's always a ceiling. And I think there's 2 ways just like that we can kind of look at life. In hitting those goals and in crushing through those ceilings, I think the biggest mistake a lot of people make, and especially me, for so long, I would take on too much and I was just so aggressive, and I was applying that, just kill type of mindset. And the best way I've heard it explained is my good friend, Jason Redman, who wrote the foreword to the book. He spent 21 years in the SEAL teams, severely wounded some years ago. He's had over 40 surgeries. His story is incredible, and he's just an amazing guy. And being an Army guy, I asked him what, because Navy SEAL training is the hardest training in the world. And I have a tremendous amount of respect for what those guys go through. And I asked him, what was the hardest part of BUDS? BUDS is the 6 or 7 month program you go through to your first thing to go through to become a SEAL. And it's got Hell Week, the attrition rate's over 80%. It's terrible. And I asked him what was the hardest thing about it. And his answer was incredible. I thought he was going to say all the time underwater or the Hell Week or being starved and sleep deprived for 5 days. He said the hardest thing is seeing the finish line. And he said a lot of guys come into this and they're worried about next week, next month, or the end. He said the best advice I got was just worry about making it to your next meal. And that really clicked with me. And he said, so ever since that guy told me that, he said, all I worried about was getting to lunch. And a lot of times it sucked just to get to lunch, but then you've got a hot meal. And then I just worried about getting to dinner. And then I just worried about, and so that chunking method, that idea of just one evolution at a time, just, it's gonna suck. And it might be easy, it might really suck, but just get to your next meal. I think really fundamentally for me allowed me to kind of slow things down, because I would take on too many tasks, and I would get so excited about all these different opportunities. And then I didn't have that one definitive burning obsession for one thing's success. So I think just chunking those things, worrying about your next meal, for me has been some of the best advice I've ever heard.
Well, and it goes back to the little wins, right? Those are little wins that allow you to keep going and keep having that momentum. So you talk in the book about a bulletproof mindset. And we know in my world and your world, 95% of success is mindset. We know that it starts with mindset. What else would you say, or did you say in the book, add from the book on bulletproofing your mindset?
Yeah, it's an important question, especially right now. And I'm glad you asked, because I've been like Mussolini from the balcony. I've been yelling about this, and it's because it's helped me so much, and a lot of people that I'm talking to about it. And that is, so there's no getting away from the fact that we're after an election, and there's still chaos going on. We have coronavirus. There's a lot of unrest in our country. And I think the biggest problem, and I fell victim to this for a very short amount of time, and then I immediately switched my mindset, is I think so many of us worry about stuff that we can't control. At the end of the day, I respect, as someone who served this country, I respect the Constitution, I respect the voting process, I respect all of that. But as important as my vote is, I can't control who's in the White House. I can't control who's wearing a mask. I can't control when coronavirus is going to go away or when we're going to get a vaccine. I can't control any of this. So if I just focus on what I can control what time I get up in the morning. I can control how I treat my wife and my stepdaughter. I can control the standards I hold myself to, and I can control the decisions I make. I can control what I put in my body. I can control how much money I spend. And as easy as that sounds, those are all very difficult things. I'd love to smash cheeseburgers all day, but I can't do that.
Right.
Well, sometimes I do. But at the end of the day, I know so many people right now that know more about a political candidate or a flippin' Kardashian than they do their own personal development. I know more people right now that know 10 times more about the Electoral College and what Biden or Trump is doing than they do their own goals, which directly affect them and their family and their bottom line and their kids. So worry about, just get that, like the blinders on a horse, just focus on that tunnel vision. What are the few things I can control? I can control my standards. I can control my decisions. I can control who I surround myself with, and I can control the content I take in. You can watch CNN for 2 hours, or you can read a book like Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. You can watch Fox News for 2 hours, or you can read, I'm just grabbing books from the side here. The Success Principles by Jack Canfield, The Magic of Believing, The War of
You're like jumping ahead here. I was going to ask you for a book recommendation at the end, and I love it. So we'll come back to that. But your point is that you talk about the people who are spending time on things that really aren't going to pay them a return on their investment of time, and the time you can't get back, because once the time is gone, you can't get it back.
Yeah, I mean, what is the true, besides that self-pleasure, which we all need, but right, what is the true ROI on 4 hours of Kim and Khloe Kardashian? Nothing against the Kardashians. They've done very well for themselves, but what is the ROI on that if it's consistent, especially with these lockdowns and everyone being home for most of the year? The amount of Netflix, and if you look at their stock, a lot of people are watching, right, the amount of Netflix being consumed rather than the amount of books being read. I mean, the average American reads less than one book a year. 83% of Americans read less than one book a year. And as a guy who writes a book, that's terrible news for me, but it's terrible news for like all of our productivity and constantly learning and wanting to be better. So yeah, man, it's a crazy thing, but just controlling what we control has been the key for me.
Well, you just created an aha in my world, and that, interesting. And again, nothing against the Kardashians. However, if the average person consumes 4 hours of the Kardashians a day, or consume 4 hours of self-help, what would get them a better return on their life as a whole? When you look at it that way, it is kind of crazy, isn't it? So Brent, let's keep talking about you talk in the book about a humble ego is a healthy ego. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's so important, and I can only speak from a male perspective, but most of the time it's not the gals out there that struggle with that ego. It's us guys, and I go into ego a lot because it's so important, and it's been one of the biggest things for me in humbling that. I think the military did a good job. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu has done a phenomenal job of humbling that ego. It all comes down to, how you see yourself, but more importantly, how others actually see you. I can tell you I was this great boyfriend all the years I was single, but if we called all of my ex-girlfriends, I'm pretty confident not every one of them is going to say I'm the greatest guy in the world. There's a reason those relationships ended. And I've never, cheated on a girl or hit a girl or anything like that, but I'm sure some of them wanted things to last longer or whatever. So, it's that perception of how we see ourselves and then how the rest of the world actually sees us. And for me, ego is a lot. There's a fine line of being very confident and cocky. And I like to hover right on that line, just underneath it, of being super, super confident, but trying to never come off as cocky and always willing to learn. And I think the people that I've seen, for the most part, it's not a blanket statement, that have had tremendous success, their ego is in check. And it's the people whose egos are not in check that I worry about. I don't worry about the guy that, did the military route. I don't worry about the guy that's been doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for 5 or 10 years. The people that have the biggest ego problems are usually the people that are the biggest problems, at least from my experience.
So let me shift gears on you, and let's talk about, as a, an entrepreneur, business owner, author. You talk wherever you want to go with this. What's the biggest challenge you've had that you've broken through in your life or your business?
I think in the beginning it was crushing that limiting belief. Even though I'm a very confident guy, and I like everyone, I have a whole plethora of weaknesses. I try to play to my strengths, like I think most people do. And, getting into business is a difficult thing. And I think when it comes to entrepreneurship, it's something sexy to put on your Instagram, in your bio. It's something to put on a business card. But, just like that Army talk I was describing earlier, there are levels to this entrepreneurship game. And I still think I'm very new in the game, even though I've been in this game for 10 years. And there's a lot of the sides of entrepreneurship that don't get talked about. Suicide that happens in entrepreneurship. There's just the financial ruin that comes with it, and people taking tremendous chances, and then their money and their family's money is gone. So it's not all sexy and private jets and the beach. It's a lot of grinding. And I look at a guy like Gary Vaynerchuk, who's actually putting that message out there that, listen, this isn't as sexy as you think. And there's a real difference between having a side hustle and making an extra 20 or 30 grand a year and being a full-on entrepreneur. Because if you're a full-on entrepreneur, you're waking up every morning and you're putting it all on the line. There is no contingency plan. For most people, there's no trust that you can lean on and inherit. There's no real backup plan. You're out there every day putting it on the line. Now, on the flip side, one of the most beautiful things about entrepreneurship for me is that I know everything I bring in is what I'm creating.
Right.
It's my hard work. It's my discipline. It's my dedication. And I'm still learning a ton about it. But I think one of the biggest things, especially in the beginning, is that limiting belief. And like for me, for example, I'm putting out my first coaching program after the new year. We're working on it diligently right now. I'm surrounding myself with people that have done this before. I'm surrounding myself with people that are smarter than me, that are more successful than me, that have what I want and are doing what I want at the highest level. And it's still intimidating. Put myself out there and say, hey, not only am I trying to show you some things to do here, and not only am I trying to hold you accountable, but I have to hold myself accountable. And there's a lot of pressure on that. And I want to make sure we're bringing tremendous value and having accountability every day. So I've had limiting beliefs, and I'm a pretty confident guy.
Yeah.
And I have struggled with some limiting beliefs, knowing that in just less than 3 months, we're going to have our first coaching program out there.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
Well, I was talking with one of our clients, our coaching clients this morning, and a highly successful individual, strong profile, an attractor in the industry that he's in. And we met a limiting belief this morning that, he didn't kind of see. And so we all have them, as successful at whatever levels, that we experience. So, Brent, let's shift gears and tell me, if I were to ask you, what's the best advice you've ever been given by someone, mentor, coach? What's the best advice you've ever been given?
My parents told me, but for some reason, that short 5-minute meeting I had with Tony Robbins in 2010 kind of stands out. And like I say, we only talked one-on-one for probably 3 or 4 minutes, but it really helped me pivot and shift my thinking. And I think I was probably struggling with some limiting beliefs, but more importantly, at the time, I was, like a lot of people are, and like a lot of us don't want to admit, I was really hung up in what people thought about me. And I was really concerned with, do people like me, and do they like what I'm saying? And I honestly, it disgusts me to say it now, but that was really like a big issue with me. I was so concerned about what other people thought of me. And when Tony pulled me aside and we had our little chat, he gave me some great advice. And I think the best advice he gave me was, and I've been listening to his CDs for a while, and he was really helping me shift my thinking, taking me through a tough time in 2009 and then into 2010. And I didn't know he swore. And he said, he dropped a couple of F-bombs, and I was blown away by that because I didn't know he swore. But the biggest thing he said to me was, who gives a shit what anyone thinks about you? Worry about what you think about you and the 5 or 10 people closest to you that you directly impact. Yeah. The rest of the world doesn't matter. They don't put food on your plate and they don't put money in your bank account. And I'm paraphrasing, but he single-handedly, and I have to give him a tremendous amount of credit because I had probably heard it before, but I was never told that way. Right. Especially from a 6'7" giant who at the time was like my personal development hero. And I think that word hero is a challenging thing to say, but at the time I'd lost my mom in 2009. I just lost a job, and I lost my girlfriend, all in like a 1 month period. So 2009, I got fat. I lowered my standards. I started making excuses for myself. And I every month was becoming this person that I hated. And one morning at like 3 a.m. on a Tuesday, I just bought this Tony Robbins CD set off of an infomercial, and he started changing my life. And right after the new year, in early 2010, I decided I was going to do an MMA fight in Vegas. I decided I was going to just completely reinvent myself. And then I just happened to meet Tony Robbins by probably it was supposed to happen. Yeah. And yeah, so not worrying about what everyone thinks about me and just focusing on being the best version of me.
I love that. When I was starting my career in real estate, a very influential person, a mentor in my life, gave me some great advice, very similar. He said, there's a book. Now, I've never read the book, mind you. However, he said, there's a book that I want you to read. And the title of the book was Your Opinion of Me Doesn't Matter to Me.
Yeah.
And I never had to read the book because I just always kept that title. And it's not that you don't appreciate people's opinion. However, you put it great. The people who you care about, the people who you respect, your coaches, your mentors, that's who you care about and their feedback. And beyond that, just be yourself. Otherwise, you're never living your own life. You're living somebody else's life. So I think that's the great advice. So let's flip it and say, what's the worst advice you've ever been given?
The worst advice I was given from an entrepreneurial perspective was essentially just throw a bunch of things against the wall and see what sticks. Yeah. That kind of, try this, and whatever one sticks, maybe that's your passion. Maybe that's what you're supposed to do. And to counter that, the best advice I ever got entrepreneurially was, that Napoleon Hill, that think and grow rich mindset of having that one burning obsession, that nonstop hardcore samurai mindset of I am not going to sleep. I will not rest until I accomplish this one thing. And throughout history, if you look at some of the most successful people in every capacity of business and life and politics and whatever else, all these people had that burning desire for that one thing. And it didn't mean that they didn't have other interests or maybe even little side hustles, but it was, no, I'm going to do this and nothing's going to stop me until I get there. So having that overwhelming just obsession with that one thing, I think is probably the best advice. Worst advice I ever got was throwing a bunch of spaghetti against the wall and seeing what sticks.
Well, Brent, oh my gosh, you shared such great insight today. And I think the biggest thing, that I heard and I would take away, and I trust others would as well, is stay focused on the things you can control. Because frankly, there's so much right now that we can't control. I think more so ever in my life, and I'm, a little bit older than you are. And yet, the fact is we can't control many things, and yet there's many things we can control. So as we wind up here, Brent, what would be one final thought that you would leave with our listeners? What would be that one thing that you always want to have an impact when you talk with somebody?
Number one thing overall, there's not even a close second. Who are you surrounding yourself with? That old saying of you are the average of your 5 closest friends is so true. And I'm not talking about your wife, your husband, your kids, your aunt, your parents, the 5 people outside of your immediate family that you surround yourself with the most. Your income is probably the average of theirs. Your fitness is probably the average of theirs. I mean, from a male perspective, if I'm hanging out with 5 guys that are all alcoholics, it's only a matter of time till I'm number 6. But if I'm hanging out with 5 people that are super happy, it's going to rub off. If I'm hanging out with 5 people that are all 6-figure or 7-figure earners, it's only a matter of time until through networking and being around those people like magic, it works. And all of us in our life right now have, especially with this pandemic, especially with all the crazy politics, all of us have that crab, that proverbial crab in the bucket, that every time we start doing a little better, every time we start making a little more money, he or she wants to pull us down because misery loves freaking company. And these people need to go. And there's a beautiful technique, and you don't have to fire these people, because it's hard to fire people. And I've had to do it. It's hard to fire people you've had in your life for 5 or 10 or 20 years. The easiest way to get rid of these people or to get them to level up is to start surrounding yourself with people that have what you want and are doing what you want. If you want to be the top realtor in Nebraska, find a top realtor in Nebraska and do a monthly coaching call with them, or find them in your city and take them out to coffee and ask them what they're doing. Get mentors, level yourself up. Who are the people that are doing what you want to do at the highest level, and who are the people that have what you want? Start surrounding yourself with those people. And I promise you, like flipping magic, all the negative people in your life, they only have 2 choices. They can get on board and they can level up themselves, or they're just going to go away. You don't have to fire anyone. And it's one of the most important things that's happened to me, because believe it or not, you control it. I going to my high school reunion after 20 years, I see so many guys, and after 2 or 3 beers, they hate their wife, they don't like their kids, they hate their job. And I'm like the happiest guy there, bouncing off the walls. And there's a reason for that. And it's because you absolutely are the average of who you're surrounding yourself with. And it's so important. And the choice is 100% yours. And I encourage everyone to seriously take a look at the 5 people they surround themselves with the most. And, if this is a basketball team, you want 5 Michael Jordans. I know that's probably not possible. And yes, Jordan's the best, not LeBron, but another topic. But yeah, that would be my number 1 advice.
Oh, that's funny. Well, Brent, thank you so much today. And I just truly appreciate you. And again, appreciate your service and all the insight that you brought us. And ladies and gentlemen, as we end our call, I always share, please subscribe at your favorite podcast source. And you can always go to the Success Ascent, www.thesuccessascent.com, and get additional information on our show. Brent, thanks so much for your time today. We appreciate you. Take care, everybody. Be safe, be healthy, and be happy. Take care.
Thanks, Pat.
If you've not yet subscribed, please go to your favorite podcast source and subscribe to the Success Ascent, or simply go to www.thesuccessascent, and that's ASCENT.com, thesuccessascent.com. Thanks so much for joining us today. We look forward to catching you on the next ascent.